Hello, 7th graders. Make sure again that you are a 7th grader watching this video and not an 8th grader. 7th grade, we will be moving into lesson 13.3, which is all about area of circles. So if you remember before we were on spring break, we were talking about circumference of circles. We are now going to talk about your area of your circle. Okay, so our objective for today is I can find the area of circles as well as semicircles. Remember that your semicircles are circles that are half the value, okay? So they are half a circle, all right? So let's go ahead and look at some other stuff. Usually, again, lately we've been skipping our warm-up, so for right now we are also just going to skip them. If you want to pause the video, give yourself a little challenge, see if you can get the answers right. Go for it, but I will not be posting the actual answers for these for right now. Okay. So your essential question right here is how can you find the area of a circle? So remember when we were talking about your circumference of a circle, when we talked about circumference of a circle, you had a formula that went like this: circumference equals pi times diameter. Or you could have used pi, or 2 times pi times radius. In this instance, we talked a lot about this magical number called pi. Okay, so back when mathematicians were learning about circles, they kept running into this magical number that just kept appearing, which was called pi. Okay, they labeled it as pi. Remember, that's a digit that continues on and on. So it's 3.14159. It just continues and continues. So to make it easier on ourselves, we use this symbol pi. Okay. Well, Miss Wank, why are you continuing to talk about pi when we're talking about area of circle? Okay, think again, because I told you this pi always happens with circles. Okay, so if I'm going to find my area of my circle, more than likely my formula for the area of the circle is also going to have this pi symbol within it. Okay, we also talked about different measurements on your circle. We've talked about diameter as well as we've talked about radius, okay? So more than likely within your formula for area, you are also going to see either a diameter or a radius, okay? If you remember from last year, what happens for this equation is that you get this equation, area equals pi times radius squared, okay? So again, it says the area A of a circle is the product of pi and the square of the radius. So one way you can write it is like this, okay? Feel free to rewrite it again. Just gives your brain a little bit more memory when you write it down and write out the process. So you're taking that pi, you're multiplying by the radius, and you're squaring it, okay? Remember, when you're talking about square, means that you are multiplying it by its original value. So you're taking r and you're multiplying it twice. So that's why you see these two r's down here, because this is another way you could write it instead, is taking this pi times radius times radius. You just want to make one big giant multiplication question, okay? Remember, your pi is that weird digit. Sometimes we'll say we want to use 3.14 or we're going to use 22 out of 7 for that measurement. Follow the directions that they tell you they want a certain measurement, but otherwise just go ahead and assume that you want 3.14. Again, the other thing about this is I drew a little circle here. This measurement from the center to the outside is your radius, okay? So make sure that when you are solving for this, you are making sure you're plugging in the radius and you're not plugging in the diameter. Remember, your diameter is the part that is entirely across the circle. I don't want that. I don't want a Pokeball right now. Okay. I want something that's only going to have this measurement. And again, it is a little hard for me to draw here on the computer, so I'm sorry. It doesn't really look like a circle. I'm trying my best. But you want a measurement that goes from the center to the outside. That is your radius, okay? We'll talk a little bit more about what happens if you're only given a diameter and you need to find the radius and so on as we look at some of these problems, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at our first few examples. Ooh, give me one quick second. So here is what our problems were. Now, I already had filled in the work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain kind of how the work went and what was the thought process that went with this. At any point, if you want to pause the video so that you can write down notes, go for it. Otherwise, I'm going to continue explaining kind of my problems and how I set these problems up, okay? So here is my area formula. Area is pi times radius squared. In this case, I've given a circle. It says find the area of my circle, okay? Once I give in that direction and I read this other part, so use 22 out of 7 for pi, I can start looking at kind of my dimensions that are on my circle to figure out what do I need to do. If I need to solve for radius or if I need to, or if I already have the radius, okay? Now remember, pi is a number, not just a variable, so you need to throw in 22 out of 7 for pi in this case. So here's my equation, area equals pi times radius squared, okay? So my radius in this case is 7. So when I plug this in, I'm plugging in a 7 squared, multiplying it by that 22 out of 7. So instead of putting that pi symbol, I'm putting 22 out of 7, okay? Once I've done that, I like to use my order of operations, do my exponents first. So take 7 times 7, get 49. From there, then I can multiply these all together, okay? This 22 out of 7, if you're plugging in a calculator, it's going to be a little easier if you take 22 divided by 7, set it equal, then multiply by 49. If you aren't doing that, you could also set this up as a fraction, so 22 out of 7 times 49 out of 1, multiply across, simplify if you can. Okay, you'll get a pretty nice even whole number here, no decimals, so you get 154 centimeters squared. Okay, remember again that when we talk about area, your units need to be squared. Okay, so make sure you have your correct units. Make sure that they're squared as well. If you don't do that, your answer would be incorrect. Okay. Part B, then, you are finding the area of the circle. This time they want me to use the 3.14 for pi, okay? Now, when I look at this circle, I notice that instead of having a radius, I have a diameter. So again, this is where I was telling you that I would come back and discuss again, how do you go from a radius to a diameter, okay? In this case, my diameter is 26. Okay, to find my radius, what I do is I take the radius equals the diameter divided by 2. Okay, so all I did is take this 26 and divide it by 2 to get my 13. From there, again, I'm using the same formula. This a equals pi times radius squared. Okay, plugging in 3.14 for pi and then multiplying it by 13 squared. Now, if once you set this up, you need to make sure you do that exponent part first. Okay, so take that 13 times 13, I got 169, multiply it by my 3.14, which gives me 530.66 inches squared. Okay, please do not round your answers unless the directions tell you you need to round them. Give me every single decimal that it has unless the directions specifically say round to the nearest tenth or round to the nearest hundredth. Okay. All right, with that being said, we're going to move on to the next part of the problems here. So example number 2, again, here's my example number 2. I'm finding the area of the circle, okay? I know that the directions say either use 3.14 or 22 out of 7 for pi. In this case, let's just use this 3.14 for each equation, okay? That way we're not getting two different sets of answers. Typically, again, I prefer this 3.14. If you aren't given directions, use 3.14 for pi. Okay, I do like to show you at least an example or two of this 22 out of 7 so that you can see what kind of answers it produces. Okay, so for example number 1, and all 3 of these actually, I end up having radiuses for every single one. So it's actually fairly easy in the sense that all I have to do once I know what my radius is I go to my equation and I just plug in that number. Okay. So for this first one, okay, again, my formula is pi times radius squared, okay. When I plug this in, my radius in this case is 4. So one other way you could do this, instead of taking 4 squared right away and realizing it's 16, you could rewrite it out and realize, okay, if I'm going to plug this in a calculator, I had to have 3.14 times 4 times 4. And that's another way you can get your answer because it will be the same thing. So in this case, your area is going to equal 50.24 inches squared. Again, you make sure those units are correct. Okay. Problem number 2. Okay, take a minute, see if you could set it up. Feel free to pause the video, double check your work as I'm going through. Again, here's your radius is 7 feet. Okay. So when you plug this one in, again, I have 3.14 because that's my pi. Okay, think again, pi times my radius squared. My radius is 7. Okay, 3.14 times 49, okay, and multiply, and I get 153.86 feet squared. Now, we had a problem that was very similar to this at the beginning, so let's go back and look at that answer here. Oh, it's right here. Now, remember when we did this one, it's pretty much the same thing, except it's a radius of 7. The measures are different because the other one was talking about feet, this one's talking about centimeters. But realize for this one, we did 22 out of 7 for pi. And you get an answer 154 centimeters. Okay. In this case, I only used 3.14, and I got something that's slightly smaller because now it's 153.86 feet squared. Okay. So again, depending on what pi version you use or what do you use for pi will determine what kind of answer you have. Okay. Answers can be a little lenient, and sometimes your answers might be a little off, and that's okay. Okay, if you had something way different though, like 75 feet, I'd be like, what were you doing wrong? Okay, first off, your units weren't even right. So make sure you have feet squared, okay? Make sure you have the correct answer. And your last one here, I just have a radius of 1. Well, if I take 1 squared, it's just 1. So really, I'm just taking 3.14 times 1, and I get 3.14 centimeters squared. Again, feel free to let me know if you have any questions along with this video. Feel free to contact me on Google Classroom, here on YouTube, or even through email, okay? Make sure to check in as much as can. I'm here and available for you if you have any questions. Feel free to pause the video as well if I'm going a little too fast as we go through. I'm just trying to get through this video so that it's not an overly long video. All right, so take a minute here and go through these problems. Okay, these are on your own. So find the area of a circle with a radius of 6 feet. Use 3.14 for pi. This time find an area of a circle with a diameter of 28 meters. And then use 22 out of 7 for pi. Okay. Again, take the minute to pause the video. Show out your work. When you're ready, restart the video. See if you got your answers correct. All right, welcome back. Here are your answers for your on your own. So for your first one, plugging them in, because it is a radius, so I can just plug in that 6. Your answer is going to be 113.04 feet squared. Okay. Problem number 2 then, it is a diameter. Make sure you divide it by 2 so that your radius is 14. Multiply those out, you get an answer of 616 meters squared. Make sure your units as well. Okay. We're going to keep moving forward. We've got one more example and one other on your own here for this part of the lesson. Make sure you also watch part 2 of this lesson as well. All right, so example 3 here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to change my pen. All right, I'm back here with my pen. What this problem is asking me, okay, is here's your main question. Which best describes this distance? So you're given a monster truck, okay, it travels. They're trying to see when the tire makes a 360-degree rotation. So what kind of measurement would show me a 360-degree measurement? Okay. Think about your tire. If I was to draw a tire like this, okay, what kind of measurement is this? Went all the way around. What shows me a 360-degree rotation? In this case, it is going to be my circumference of the tire. Okay. It is not your radius, your diameter, and it is not your area because your area is going to be the entire thing. I only want the part that's around it. Okay. This one's kind of a similar question. Think about it first for a minute, pause the video, see if you can answer it. All right, if I want to find the height of this tire, here's my tire, okay? It's going from one top to the other. My